Welcome to Science with Soul. I'm Dr. Lottie Valentine and the host of this podcast. I'm a physician, evidential psychic medium, international keynote speaker, and author of Med School After Menopause, The Journey of My Soul, an inspirational story about transformation, healing, and spirituality, available online at Amazon as well as other online platforms worldwide. The inspiration for this podcast came from my own life experiences. As I have journeyed through life, it has taught me that we're part of a greater divine web of interconnectedness. I have walked the path of illness, healing, and transformation. After two near-death experiences, I became clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient, and was guided to attend medical school at the age of 54. We will be meeting with many different types of doctors, healers, as well as spiritual leaders, educators, and other inspiring souls in this podcast. It is my hope that you will gain information and create a path to healing your own life, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, and bridge the gap between science and soul. If you are a person who understands the interconnectedness of mind, body, and soul, and would like to take one of my courses or work with me to create a path of healing your own life, please visit divinespiritualessence.com or drlottie.com. Welcome to Dr. Lottie Science with Soul. Today, I'm excited to have Felicia Bender back with me for a second interview. Felicia Bender, Ph.D., the Practical Numerologist, is devoted to helping audiences uncover their life's purpose and so much more with numerology. She is the author of Redesign Your Life Using Numerology to create the wildly optimal you, as well as Master Numbers 11, 22, 33, the ultimate guide. Felicia is the resident numerologist for astrostyle.com and is featured in many media outlets, including Refinery 29, Women's Health, Elephant Journal, and more. So welcome, Felicia. I'm so excited to have you back for a second interview.
I'm so excited, and I love talking about what we're talking about today, the personal year cycle. So
yeah, so it's going to be, if you guys missed the first interview with Felicia, she talked about your life path number and taught us how to calculate that. So today you're going to take us a step further, right, with the personal year.
Exactly, because the life path is more like knowing your sun sign, right? In astrology, knowing that you're a Sagittarius or a Libra or whatever. And yet what we're going to talk about today is not so much about who you are, numerologically speaking. We're going to be talking about an entirely different aspect of numerology, and that is cycles of time. So in numerology, we can talk about, again, your personality profile, other things of that nature. And then even more important or equally important is knowing the cycles that you go through, right? Mm-hmm. And knowing the timing. And so there are different kinds of cycles that we can talk about. But today we're going to talk about the personal year cycle, because I find that that's the most immediate energy that we're all dealing with.
That's what we sort of feel on a daily basis.
Yes, when we're going through our particular year, because let's start at the beginning here and go through the calculation. It's a very easy calculation for those of you listening. You will want to know your personal year so that you can go, oh, now I get it. Now I get why that stuff is happening, or I'm feeling this way, or that sort of thing. So basically, let's just go through the calculation first. So it's a very, very simple one. You take your day of birth, and for you, if you don't mind me using yours, that's
go ahead.
May. It's almost birthday time for you.
Mm-hmm.
So. And quiet about that. So it's May, and you're born on the 28th. In this calculation for the personal year, we do not use the year of birth. Just put that in a corner somewhere. We will use the current year. So for us, that would be 2021. And just a little sidebar, if you listen to this and go, oh man, I wonder what personal year I was in 1998. you can do the same thing. You can calculate your birth month, your birthday, and that year of that you're wanting to know your personal year for, and you will get the personal year that you were experiencing in that particular year. And so with that said, let's see what personal year you are in this year. So May is how we do this calculation. May is a 5. It's the 5th month. So that is a 5. Now we're going to segment this out into 3 different numbers. So you're born on the 28th. So we take 2 plus 8 equals 10. So understand, in numerology, we are always reducing to a 1-digit number. There are certain exceptions for that, and yet we won't go into those quite yet. And so if you get a 10, that can be a little bit confusing, because you're like, well, I got a 10. So now you keep adding. So 1 plus 0 equals 1. So 28 is a 1. So now we go to 2021, the year we're in, and we add that together like one easy addition problem. So it's 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 1 equals 5. So now we're going to take those 3 numbers and add them together. So 5 plus 1 plus 5 equals 11. So remember I said, oh, there are certain exceptions to reducing. Well, this is one of them. So and I love this as an example, because those of you who may get a master number here, you can get a master number 11 or a 22 and even a 33 when you're calculating for your personal year, And so what does that mean? The master numbers in numerology are the double digits, the double 1, which is the 11, double 2, 22, and 33. So when you see this number, don't reduce it. You just understand it has a significance to it. It is called a master number. And yet the way that I note this is 11/2. So if you were to add 1 plus 1, it would equal 2. And 2 is the base energy that you are experiencing this year as your personal year. And yet the 11 adds a little zing to it, which we'll talk about.
Wait, is this why I feel this way? I'm just kidding.
Yes.
This will be
yes,
good.
It is.
Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So, so with that, I hope all of you listening have gotten your personal year in front of you. And I think it would just be advantageous to walk through each of the personal years. But first, before we do that, I do like to say that the personal years, so what? Why do I need to know this, right? I call it knowing the theme to your party, truly, because it's almost like you really want to know what party you're being invited to for an entire 12 months, right? You don't want to show up to the bachelor party or to your mother's funeral or, party, the memorial service get together or whatever party it is without being prepared, right? Without wearing the right outfit and all of that. So if we think of it that way, we want to show up to the right party with the right frame of mind and with the right outfit on. And so with that said, each of these personal years happens. The way I practice it with Pythagorean numerology is that we start this on January 1st of any given year, and it goes through December 31st. I find that there is an intensification around your birthday, no matter when it falls during the year. And there's also a peak month in September that we won't really talk about, but just understand that September kind of offers a crescendo of the energy of your personal year. Just a little side note also that some numerologists do actually consider the personal year to go from birthday to birthday. So there are different schools of thought here, and yet what I'm talking about and what the way that I look at it, it goes from January 1st to December 31st. So does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes
Okay.
great sense.
All right, perfect. So, so with that said, let's look at what each number brings with it. So, a one personal year. If you're in a one personal year, this is the beginning of a new cycle. So, the personal year cycle is a 9-year cycle, goes 1 through 9, and then repeats endlessly from birth to death. So 1 through 9 is what we're looking at. So the one personal year, it would stand to reason, is the beginning.
Right?
Yeah, it's the beginning of a new cycle. So this really is a very significant year for you if you're in a one personal year. It's a year of new beginnings. It's a year of planting seeds. It really is a questioning, what do I want to see grow and blossom in these next 9 years? And this is the end of a 3-year transition cycle that you're going through. So you've gone through some major transitions and changes. Anyone who is in their one personal year. So you're picking yourself up and figuring out what is next. What is the next level of evolution? So the one, it's really about creativity. Oh, yes.
I have a question.
Yes,
So,
please.
so it doesn't go in order, does it? So if you're a one personal year this year, you're not going to be a 2 next year. You could be any number, right?
Oh, no, it goes in order. So,
It goes in order.
yes, it does. So you will experience a one personal year.
Mm-hmm.
The following year is a 2, then a 3, 4, and so on.
Oh, I see. I think I was a 1 last year. So I was confused because you said I'm an 11 now, but I'm an 11 too.
Yes. So exactly. That's a
Okay.
really good point because it can get confusing.
Yeah.
And so, yes, that foundational level of the 2 is really what you're experiencing this year. The 11 is the little kicker
Okay.
that will go
So I'll
into.
be a 3 next year.
You will be a 3 next year.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So, so last year you were in a 1. So before let me give a little bit more about this, and then maybe you can put it into context for people in terms of maybe a few things that happened with you in your life, because this is that one personal year is about independence, confidence, building levels of confidence. It's about stepping into leadership positions. It's really about taking charge of your life. And it really will demand, again, new starts on all levels. It's where you are asked to align with your ambitions, right? And to stand up for yourself, to trust those skills that you have, and to take some risks. I find the 1 is all about that pioneering, courageous energy. So in a one personal year, it's really a great idea. Anything that you've kind of shied away from in terms of, I don't know, lack of self-confidence, or you think it's a little too weird or something, it's the universe's signals to say, no, that's exactly what you need to be doing. It's exactly what you need to be doing right now. And it's a time to really take responsibility. There can be flip sides, of course. And that's one of the wonderful things about understanding the dynamic of the year, because we really can feel it, right? At the end of the year, in December, everyone's kind of going on about their New Year's resolutions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet it is something that is truly shifting energetically. That is what numerology is all about. It's about the vibration. It's about the frequency that comes in to support us and to communicate with us during these, when it shows up for us. So because of that, it's always, I find, a really great thing to understand, okay, now I know that this is my new beginnings year to really take risks, to stand up for myself, to get out there. And yet, what am I going to see come into my life that might be challenging during this year? That might be something that I need to have my antenna up about, that I can be aware of, because knowledge is power, right? In all situations, but particularly in this. So it's really a time where there can be doubt, there can be some kind of tunnel vision, sort of very myopic, rather than being more open and creative. So you have to kind of be a little bit wary of that. It's a time where you can feel very dependent on things or people, because it's really asking you to extract yourself from dependent or codependent relationship situations. So just to have an idea that this is a time when those things will come flying at you, right? Because how do we learn something unless we get to do it as a practice sport?
Right, exactly. It's a little gentle push on the back.
Yeah, a little on the behind, and so oftentimes that's a really, it's a bonus thing to understand. Oh, that's why these people are coming in and trying to control me all the time this year. This is why I'm, all of those issues, and you can make some sense out of it and work with it, and then pat yourself on the back when you do a good job. So it's you often feel like you have to go a little bit solo, like you're holding things on your shoulders sometimes in that one personal year. But overall, it is a new start, new beginnings. I mean, I think it is. Yes, it is. It's Bruce Springsteen. I love his quote that he says, "Life is a blank white sheet of paper waiting for you to write on it." Right? So that can be your thematic for the one personal year. So how did that show up for you in last year?
There was definitely a lot of new beginnings and things shifting in my life. I was, definitely pulled a lot in the spiritual direction. I did many different interviews on my near-death experience. Spoke at conference. I became a speaker at a world conference. So now I'm a international keynote speaker. I really had to, just step up to the plate, so to speak. And I started a lot of different things. I started this podcast also last year, and it was just really stepping into myself and, what can I bring to the people to help other people. And it was
Absolutely.
just, brought that whole spirituality with it.
That's beautiful. And I'm sure that you would be honest with your listeners when you say, and it wasn't terribly easy a lot of the time. It challenged your sense of self and, stepping up and doing that, because that's putting yourself out there.
Speaking at large conferences, and it was the first time I really stepped up to the plate that way and spoke about spiritual things. I've given a lot of presentations in my life, but always about business or things like that. And this was all about talking about spirituality and my own experiences in life with that. So it's a whole new different avenue. It's a whole new road that I embarked on literally in that 1 year. It sort of created a whole new path in my life.
Absolutely. And I love what you're saying is that this really demanded that you step into yourself in a much more scary and authentic and somewhat strange way, because people kind of can get on board with metaphysical conversations or not.
Right.
Right. And
it's not definitely not easy, because you're being challenged to really follow through on your own path. But it's always scary because, for somebody who's already doing it, it would be easy, but you're being pushed to do it. And so you really have to muster up everything you have inside of you in order to be able to step into that new role.
Absolutely.
So it's challenging to go through. It was challenging to go through that year. So I can't wait what you're going to tell me about this year.
Ooh, about the
sort of feel like Gumby sometimes, like being stretched.
Gumby and Pokey all at one time, right?
Right. Like, stretch me more. I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm ready, I think. Yeah.
Right.
So the encapsulation for that one personal year, it is a very high-powered year marked by your determination and your initiative, right? Basically. Is what it is. So the 2. So we'll talk about the foundational 2, and then I'll give you just a little overview of the 11 for those of you listening who might also be in your 11 personal year. And yet the 2 is all about it's a slowdown year overall, and yet for the 11-2 that might be a little oxymoronic, but we'll
when is it going to slow down?
When is it going?
I'm waiting.
You're waiting patiently, but not patiently, because that's what the 2 is all about. So this year is actually set up as a bit of a respite, a bit of a resting period for people in a flat out 2 personal year, because it's the end of that 3-year push time, right? So you need a little bit of a little refueling time. And so it's been a very self-focused from the 8, 9 into the 1. That's a very kind of self-focused time where you're really getting yourself into position for this next level of self-actualization. The 2 personal year is where you are offered a moment to kind of move your attention outward rather than into oh, how can I be of support and service to others? How can I learn to be more diplomatic? This is a year where I'm learning, everyone's favorite, patience. You have to say it with that kind of dramatic pause. Yet it's also about love, and really it's a spiritually, intuitively developmental year for you. It is the bottom line is that it's also really very emotional, feels highly emotionally sensitive in a 2 personal year. And yet the deepest core level message and learning to be happening during a 2 year is to really become yourself from the inside out, to really determine, because the 2 is often this pleasing energy, this energy that wants to, again, kind of mutate to meet the needs of others. So in a 2 year, you're often going to be called upon to really set up some strong, healthy, supple boundaries. So guess what you get?
Yeah.
A lot of opportunities to practice that and to make those determinations, right? And yet the 2 is also asking you to, again, become very diplomatic and not take everything or much of anything personally. So it's going to put you in situations of conflict, of situations of attempting to understand where other people are coming from, to stand in their shoes, before we react or respond, and all of those things. And it's also very much a love and relationship oriented year. Often this is a time, if you're single and seeking partnership, where you can be open and have enough time to develop a relationship. If you're in a relationship, you can kind of up level it. It's often a year where people will get married or get engaged or meet the one in that way. So very, very much about relationships. Business, it's very networking related. It's often, this is a year where it's like, oh my gosh, 2 steps forward, 5 steps back. A lot of delays, a lot of frustrations, a lot of those sorts of things. And yet the ultimate thing, it's all about timing. You can say divine timing, whatever you would like to say. It's like this is the year where all those seeds you planted from last year are being tended to. So there are days or weeks or even maybe a month where you're frantically, putting in the fertilizer and getting the weeds put back and doing all this stuff. But then mostly it's kind of hanging out, watching it grow. So that's, if we think about it that way, it's like you don't want you can't harvest something that isn't mature, isn't ready to be harvested. So that's how we must think about the 2 personal year, because particularly people who have kind of a type A personality, it can be a hard one, because it's like, okay, chop, chop, I gotta see some results here.
I don't have a type A personality, do I?
No, not
a little bit. A little bit.
Yeah, I'm clearing my throat on it. So if we add for the 11, we're going to add that patience, love, and networking, and we're going to add a dash of spiritual illumination. So it really, I always say kind of the mantra for this year is kind of how do I love, how do I want to be loved? And then also with the 11 is how do I put my higher ideals into practice, into practical application. So think of it as double last year, double the 1, from last year.
Mm-hmm.
With with the little hammock of the two.
Right. It
That
sort of actually fits very well. It's been
yeah,
like I go through an intense period and I get a couple of days to breathe, and then we do another set, so to
yes,
speak. Yeah,
yeah.
very accurate.
It can be a year of I almost don't like this terminology, but I'll use it anyway, of fame and fortune, where things
Uh-huh.
can really take off in that
Mm-hmm.
way. And yet again, there's going to be fits and starts. There's going to be some delays. There's going to be all of that. And yet it really is also the undercurrent is the 11 is when you're in an 11 energy, it's very, what? It's etheric and it's very anxious. It's like this vibrating. Do you know that has anyone out there been to those gyms where you have one of those vibrating plates that you
Right.
stand on,
The
right?
bone for the bone.
Exercise?
Yeah.
It's like that. It's like you feel
Uh,
like you're just vibrating the whole time. And so there is that frequency there. The 11 is where in an 11-2 personal year, I find you get incredible intuitive insights,
mhm.
have incredible opportunities to develop your sense of spirituality, whatever that means to you, your to really develop and understand your intuitive language, however that shows up and speaks to you. And it often is a time where you will look back in a year, 2 years, 3 years and beyond and go, oh my gosh, I had no idea what was really going on that year. How pivotal that
Mhm.
was for me and my growth. I just thought I was watching, I don't know. I just thought I was watching the flowers grow
Right.
and wondering what was going on. But that is so. Is that making sense for you
Oh
overall?
yeah, it makes perfect sense. I keep going outside, standing on the grass, ground myself. So
Yes.
yeah,
Well, and
more
you,
grounding this year than any past year. It's I constantly have to ground myself, and that's probably that energy.
I really love the fact that you said that, because also, a little bit of a bonus idea is you are an 11-2 life path. If
Mhm.
you're familiar with numerology and you know your life path number, when you have a personal year that is the same as your life path, it does kind of double down on the energy and the experience during that year. I find that we're always going to be getting double the pleasures and double whatever triggers that we are engaged in right now. Like, what is it in your 11-2
Mhm.
life path that really needs nurturance and development? And that's going to really become a top priority in an 11-2 personal year. So I bet that makes sense too.
Yeah, yeah. No, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're in a 3, so next
Mhm.
year for you will be a 3. The 3 is all about self-improvement, communication, creativity. This is a year where you can kind of, jump jump out of the kind of minutia of the 2 and into self-improvement on any realm. It's where, what do I want to improve about myself? It's also asking you to give yourself voice and to really rely on impeccable communication. Overall, it's a year where you're supposed to get out there and get social, have some fun. The 3 is a number of joy and optimism. And if you are an artist or a creative, expressive person, this is a red letter year for actually doing your projects, getting your work out there. If you're a novelist, if you're a podcaster, if you're an actor, if any of those things, just put that extra creative juice into it. You can really, really, oftentimes people will write a book or write their something during this year. It'll be their productive creative time, and then the year after is when it is implemented, right? Is when it gets out of editing, when it gets into the marketing, when it has all of those process oriented things that have to happen, that most creatives are like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that part. I just want to create it. And so it's very creative. It's also going to be an emotions-based year. The 3 is, again, the number of emotional self-expression. So any of your emotional trigger points will come up to say hello to you. Kind of on a platter. And so some people find it a somewhat difficult year if they're grappling with the ways in which they communicate, or grappling with some maybe older trauma, that might come up to be looked at, to be visited. And yet the beautiful part is that when that is experienced and released, then it's a beautiful time for healing, which is also a major element and aspect of the 3. And so, the kind of caveat to the 3, there can be some emotional ups, downs, and all arounds. So expect maybe a little bit of that. It can be where you have so many things going on, a bit scattered. So asking you to maybe rein it in. But this is a year where anything you've been wanting to take hip hop dance lessons, go do it. You want to play the flute, you want to learn to play chess, anything, even on that level, or even, spiffing up your health regime and getting a new wardrobe, a new haircut, something like that is really in line for the energy of that self-improvement of the 3. So you've got that coming.
I've got that coming. We're writing my second book then.
Oh, that's absolutely
it's
perfection.
Already brewing, so it's just it's going to be perfect timing.
Just get it on the calendar.
Make sure I start January 1st.
There you go. You're right. See, and that's the beauty of it also, when you're thinking it and feeling it, because all this does is validate what you're already kind of experiencing in many ways, and it just allows us to lean into it and go, oh yeah, that is what it's all about. So the 4 personal year is just, I kind of hinted at that. It's more of a time where all your creative stuff and all your self-improvement of the 3 is going to go into, okay, now we got to get a little serious. We got to, put some hard work in, some concerted effort. We got to get some longer range goals in place. The 4 is the number of its foundations. Got to think of it as pouring your foundation for the next, for this next segment of life. It's often, again, when something is implemented from the year prior, that is going to take more time to implement, right. to I mean, if you've written your book and you've got it to the editor and everything, maybe or maybe it gets to the editor at the beginning of the year and goes through edits, and then has to deal with the publisher or whatever, the book develop, and then you got to go through who are you going to get to do the marketing and how are you going to set. I mean, that takes an extended amount of time to do that. So that's very much the energy of that. It's about systems and step-by-step processes. It really is a time to get organized, set up those foundations. The slow and steady wins the race in the 4 personal year. It's a time to define goals and to set up your systems to do that. So very, very, at the end of that year, oh my gosh, you look back, and when you've been in it to win it, you can go, wow, what a job. I mean, that sense of satisfaction that comes in when you have been doing it. The issues that can come into play, because everyone always wants to know that, you can feel anything but wanting to actually do the work. And there can be, again, limiting circumstances that come into play that can thwart people or make them frustrated or want to abandon. And yet the 4 is offering you these opportunities to really commit and to do it. So the 22 4 personal year, that same energy, except this is also focused on has a spiritual focus and advancement in that realm. And it can be really an important year. That the 22 is the master builder and the master teacher, the master systems builder. So that's often a year where someone is often really working on a significant project when that year shows up. and how that significance shows up. It doesn't necessarily mean like a multi-billion-dollar company or something. It could mean that they're really situating their life and doing something that will substantially shift their life direction in many ways. So it's really a time to take on your bigger dreams during a 22. And then we've got the 5. So it's always really interesting. It's kind of the ebb and flow of the numbers, right? We have kind of a real active year and then a different kind of, reversal year. And so the hard work and everything will come to pay off in your 5 personal year. If you've been doing all that hard work, because it's about freedom, it's about change. It's also about facing fears, because the 5 is, as a personal year, is a very pivotal year. Usually there's a lot of bright and shiny objects going on at the beginning and through the midpoint of the year. And then things kind of start to hash out. And there will be significant change for you if you're in a 5 personal year toward the end of the year. And it's really prodding you, pressing you to figure out where you want to create more levels of freedom in your life. Is it financial freedom? Is it, spiritual freedom, freedom with your health, all kinds of other levels? And what is it going to take to get there? Because the 5 ultimately is about responsible freedom, or freedom through self-discipline. So you're going to be bridging a little of that disciplined energy, hopefully. And yet it's also a time for travel. Oh my gosh, if we could, the travel, sex, sensual exploits of all kinds really come in during a 5, really feeling that frenetic energy. The opposing forces here are feelings of being really tethered or smothered or restricted, or very, very fearful about certain things in a heightened level and in a heightened way that you might not otherwise feel. So be open. It's a year of change. And be open to the adventure during a 5 year is what I would say. And then the 6 personal year, we're going to, again, the pendulum comes right on back, and it's time to evaluate relationships and take on responsibility. The 6 is all about home, family, feeling at home, service, duty, all of those very nurturing elements. I find that this is very much a time where people are truly evaluating their relationships, and mostly the relationship with themselves. Like, who am I now? How am I who I, am I acting on that? Right. So, And so I think about it as the mantra is, should I stay or should I go? Or should it stay or should it go? In numerology, the 6 is often seen as the marriage and divorce number. And it doesn't mean that in an ominous way. It's just, are we going to commit or are we not? Because it's often a point where people will actually literally get married or literally get divorced in a 6. And if they're teetering on that, if it's been something, it's like that breaking point where you finally go, yeah, this isn't working. I can't commit to this relationship. It's just not fitting for me. So it is time to get really serious about how you engage in relationships. It's time to take on additional responsibility and to be of service in many ways. It's also a time where home and family takes a significant focus, and this could be just in your relationship life and also just in your home. Like, it might be a time where you buy a home, where you move, where you remodel, where you re-landscape. All of those home-based things can happen in a 6 personal year. So then we get to the 7, which is it's a pausing time in many ways, even though it often doesn't feel that way. Life goes on as usual, and yet it is all about inner work, knowledge gathering. It's a really digging deep year. I always say that the mantra for the 7 is, would the real me please stand up? And it's really kind of riding on that thread of the 6, which is all about your relationships and how you're engaging. And then now it's time to kind of contemplate your own navel and do that. So it's more of knowledge gathering, year. It's a seeking year. It's an introspective year. It's more of a sabbatical time, either literally or figuratively. It's more a time for a retreat rather than a, I don't know, alcohol fueled week in Cabo or whatever. So it really is you coming to these deepest crevices of your being in a 7. And yet again, it's often where you're working on projects, doing things where you're gathering more knowledge, where you're open to more spiritual insight, whatever that means to you personally. It can feel very much like you lower energy and like you want to kind of hibernate a little bit. So I always say, give yourself a hall pass. A hall pass to hibernate in a 7 personal year, because you'll wish you had a little of that left, because now you're going into your 8. The 8 personal year is the beginning of what I call a 3-year push time. It is all about financial growth, personal empowerment, and endurance. It's really about how can I empower myself on every level. It's a financially driven year, usually. Finances are, the 8 is a finance number. It's really looking at your financial picture and wanting to get real about it. And what do I, how do I want to grow this? Oftentimes it's a change in career. It can be all of that. And yet at the get-go, it's about empowerment. So I find that this is a very intense year of testing. It's kind of like cosmic boot camp. It really is. It's like, it's a test. And you're kind of going, hey, can I have some of that 7 personal year, downtime? And they're like, nope, you can't. You should have taken advantage of that last year, because this year we're not going to give you a break. We're going to keep at you and make sure that you're really up to par. You're really, getting ripped and strong in all kinds of ways. So it is going to also offer you at the very get-go levels of test with empowerment. And think about it, that can be from so many different angles. I mean, if you're someone who's, struggling with addictions, with, maybe you're an alcoholic or don't want to admit that yet, and maybe this is a year where, this is something happens and there's just no denying it. You have to move, left or right of center on that, move the needle on it. Or it could be in relationship life. Maybe you are in an abusive relationship, or you are the abuser, and you get to negotiate that. Oftentimes these points of power and empowerment and control and domination come into play, I find, in an 8 personal year. And it's money and empowerment boot camp. It is it can be an incredibly dynamic time for expansion financially, and it can go up and down and all around, and yet it's not going to fall, pennies from heaven. The 8 is about that. It's about doing it. It's about making it happen. It's about standing up and getting assertive about what you want and need. And then you move into the 9. So that 8 is beginning that push into empowerment. And then the 9 is, I always envision it kind of like in the 8 year, you're paddling in your canoe, you're just paddling and you're kind of going upstream a little bit, and you're exhausted and you're sore and you're sunburned and everything. But if you stop, you're just going to get pulled somewhere that you don't even know where. And so in the 9 personal year, it's kind of like you've been doing that for a whole year. Put the paddles down and now see where the canoe takes you. And it's about wrapping. The 9 is the number of completions. It's the number of letting go and of surrender. It's time to make room for new for new things to enter, right? So as corny as it is, every every
It's so
ending
spot
is
on.
some
Yeah.
other new beginnings end, right? And
Right.
yet it can be a very emotional year. It's just a very transitional, transformative year. What I always want to emphasize is this can be a year truly where dreams come true. When you're ready to just go, I do not need this anymore. It's one of those funny things, isn't it? A lot of times that we go, I hate this job. Oh my God, I hate this job. I can't stand going here. It's making me sick. And then suddenly, you get fired. I hate this apartment. It's, my neighbor is so loud and everything else. And your landlord, tells you that you have to get out in 2 months because they're selling the building. You're miserable in your marriage. You've sought therapy for 3 years. It's not working, and you've been hanging on, and suddenly your spouse goes, you know what, this is done. Those are things that can often happen. It's painful as it happens because it's a change and it's a transition and it's always scary. And yet the 9 personal year is opening you to have room for this reinvention point for this next year. And yet the trick of it is, for me, it demands that you kind of hang out in this liminal space for a while without having the answer as to what's next. Because we always want to, okay, if I get rid of this, I want this to take its place, like more than immediately, like almost before it leaves. I want something else to be there. And yet I find in the 9 year that just doesn't happen. And it can feel very disconcerting. And yet we're here we experience these things to let go, to trust, and to surrender to that higher vision and version of ourselves. So we have a moment to grow into that. So that is the end of a 9 year cycle. And then you begin again and anew with the 9. And I find it interesting because if we go through our cycles from birth to death, I look at mine, I'm like, oh my gosh, those are all my transition points.
It's so true. I started writing down on a piece of paper and I was just laughing because it was so spot on, with my own life. And those exact transition points, even your examples were spot on.
And yes, it is. It's a wonderful thing I love about these tools. You and I talk a lot about. There are so many tools at our fingertips, right, to use and to learn about. And this isn't it isn't prescribed. Again, it's free will that we have, and yet to understand that there is a framework that we're working with, and when we can put. To me, what I love is just knowing that there's cycles.
Right.
I'm not a weirdo and I'm just failing every single day, and then also to just have the basis of the key elements, the key words are what I always love coming back to. And when I'm feeling a little rudderless, which we all do on many occasions, just to have that sense of validation and to be able to derive some meaning out of the great things that happen, and also some of the things that are a little more difficult or painful.
Yeah, no, it's hugely insightful. It's funny because I realized that the 7 year, which was the kind of you get to rest a little bit. That was my first year out of med school. Like I was a 7, and all I did was I slept so much. I slept like 14 hours every night because your adrenals are just shot after you get out of med school. So it's just so funny to look back and think about what I did those years. And then the 8 year, I wrote my book that I then finished in the spring of my 9 year, which went into editing and then published at the end of my 9 year. And then I went into my 1 year, which was last year. And and then it transitioned in, you know, it's this whole transition into the spiritual. And the whole 8 year was also, I wrote my book, but I also started to establish my own clinic. And I was like, I need to do something different. I need to be my own boss. I need to have my own space. And it's now, when you're talking about it and I'm looking at the years, it just falls right into place. So insightful. Like it was in my chart. It was just already there.
And yet you had to
And
live it to learn it.
And here I thought I was in charge. It was already planned out. This year you're going to think about this. So, and now I am thinking about my second book and what it's going to be about. And, you know, I keep thinking, oh, you know, I feel like maybe around Christmas, I'll be ready to, you know, write it next year. And now you're telling me a 3 is next year. Mm-hmm. So it's so interesting how these cycles appear in our life. And we think that it's just random, but there is more to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also, one of the things that I love, I don't know why I feel like I need to mention this, and for you for next year, and I know I've said this to you before, I think, but I'll share it here, is the 3, when you experience the 3, and one of the things is you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to just get into my book. It's like, oh, okay, wait a minute. The 3 is all about lightening up and having fun and experiencing things in a playful way whenever possible, and not in that superficial, you know, way, but in a playful way. And I always say that the mantra for the 3, which I'll use this until I die, because I just love it, for the 3, which is, when you're laughing, you're learning. And that is one of those things that I think is going to infuse your next project with, how do I go about, I don't even know your subject matter or anything at this point, and how am I going to infuse an emotional connectivity and a lightness and an accessibility in a new and relevant way to express this to my audience. And because at the end of the day, also the messaging, or the supportive energy of the 3 is about whatever you're doing that is involved with inspiring, motivating, and uplifting others, is really supported by that 3 energy.
Well, it fits right in. So I don't have the title yet, and my thoughts are still brewing, but it makes perfect sense, because it is exactly what I'm trying to do. Even with this podcast, it's just to bring messages and uplift the world and expand everybody's knowledge and awareness about how incredibly divine our existence really is. Because the more we dig into astrology and numerology and mediumship and psychics and all of that, and when you put it all together, you can see that the threads of connection between the different systems that we have here on Earth available to us, to understand our connectedness to all that is. So it's just amazing. It's so divine and so planned out. And here we think we are completely in charge. So a little lesson for us when we look at our numerology chart.
Yes, I absolutely agree. Yes, in charge.
So how can people schedule a session with you? I recently had a session with Felicia, and it was so much fun, and it was so insightful to have her tell me about my numbers. And my daughter was sitting in on this session, and it was very fun for my daughter to hear about who I am, because it was spot on, and she would just laugh at all the insights that Felicia would give. So how can people schedule a session with you?
For all things numerology, if you're numerology curious, and for sessions, just go to FeliciaBender.com. So that's, the spelling is not PH, but it's FELICIABENDER.com.
And can people also get a report, if they can afford a personal session? Can they get like a written report, like an astrology chart?
Absolutely. I do offer some a basic profile. You can get a double package that has your personal year forecast there. And also there are some online courses that, like an online course that's less expensive than a personal session, but you can learn about your life path number. You can learn about other elements if you're, again, just get curious about numerology and want to learn a little bit more.
It's just so great. And I can't wait for people to sign up or learn more about it, because it's so insightful when you learn about your own numerology chart and you can see your paths in your own life. So I want to thank you so much for coming on the show again today and sharing your knowledge with all the listeners.
Oh, I want to thank you. It's just the time flies. It's such a pleasure with you. So thank you for all you do.
Yeah, thank you. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Dr. Lottie, Science with Soul. To stay up to date on future episodes and to help us reach a larger audience, remember to subscribe, review, and share this podcast. If you're a person who understands the interconnectedness of mind, body, and soul, and would like to take one of my courses or work with me to create a path of healing your own life, please visit divinespiritualessence.com or drlottie.com. My book, Med School After Menopause, The Journey of My Soul, an inspirational story about transformation, healing, and spirituality, is available online at Amazon as well as other online platforms worldwide.